Feel, Deal, and Heal, Understanding Loss and Grief by me, Miss Elizabeth Pelliconi, Spiritual Care and Community Animator with the English Montreal School Board 2020. We're going to start the presentation by watching a video. This is a clip from the movie Inside Out, created by Disney. And in this clip, you'll see Bing Bong, the dolphin-like elephant, and he's about to lose something very important to him. And you're going to see the two characters of sadness and joy, and you're going to see how each emotion character reacts to Bing Bong's major, profound loss. And I'm going to explore that with you after we watch the clip.
Oh, the stuffed animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's a brand new legs to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the top. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness!
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
So, some questions to explore about the clip we just saw. Why was Bing Bong sad? So he was sad because he lost the rocket, but the rocket wasn't just an object to him. It was a representation of his friendship with the other character, Riley. And so essentially she's ending their friendship by disposing of this rocket. And that is what the loss really is. And so you saw his reaction. He was very sad. And he started to go into what we call grief. And so when you look at the two characters of joy and sadness and you examine how each one handled the situation, you can see that Joy tried to distract Bing Bong. She tried to get him back on task. Okay, we have to get back to the train station. Let's do that instead. She tried to make him laugh. She tried to, tell him it's not that big of a deal. It's going to be okay. And as you could see, none of those strategies worked. Bing Bong was still sad, very sad. It was only when the character of sadness came, sat down next to him, and started talking about what Bing Bong had lost, that then he was able to come out of his sadness. She didn't hide away from the fact that he was sad. She didn't minimize the importance of this relationship to him. She talked about how they had a wonderful friendship and they had wonderful experiences together. And now that it's over, it's sad and it's it makes sense that it's sad and that it's okay for him to be sad. And she also didn't judge him or tell him to get over it quickly. He started to cry. She didn't tell him to stop crying. She didn't tell him to do anything. She just sat with him and listened to him and explored this wonderful relationship that he had with Riley. And as a result, he was able to come out of his sadness. Now, is he 100% back to feeling amazing? No. Is he totally fine with the fact that Riley has dumped him? No. But he's able to now, be more functional and to kind of move on in life. And so that is what grief is able to do for us. It gives us our chance to process the loss that we've experienced. And our emotions play such a huge role in that we cannot talk about grief without talking about how our emotions are so important and how we need to feel them. And we can't hide them away or pretend they don't exist. So, all the feels. So, all of our feelings are important and necessary to healthy human development. Feelings are not right, they're not wrong, they just exist. They pass through us like clouds passing through the sky. So sometimes the clouds are fluffy and white. Sometimes the clouds are wispy and dispersed. Sometimes the clouds are stormy and dark. But we never get rid of clouds. We just let the weather pass, right? So it's the same thing with our feelings. Our feelings, we can't get rid of our feelings. They will pass through us. And just how clouds are a messenger of the kind of weather that we're going to be experiencing, feelings are messengers on the kind of reactions we're going to have to the experiences that we have. So it's like feelings are like messengers, and they tell us what's going on. There's something to pay attention to in our environment because there's something you're going to need to do. There's going to have to be action. What kind of action depends on the kinds of feelings that you're going through, right? So just think about in your head how many different feelings we have. We have so many. We have anger, sadness, joy, excitement, nervousness, anxiety, helplessness, fear, tiredness, depression, boredom. Like there's so many that there's hundreds of feelings. And feelings are normal because they are what make us human. And so we need to feel these feelings. And everybody, all humans, have access to all of these feelings. Some of us will feel these feelings more intensely. Some of us will feel them less intensely. That's based on personality. But a feeling is never wrong. A feeling is a message that your heart, your brain is telling you need to pay attention to something, and there's something you need to do about it. So if we're going to grieve properly, we have to embrace all of our emotions. So grief is a response to loss. But when I talk about loss, what kind of loss am I talking about? I'm talking about all kinds of loss. Loss is part of life. You will lose things in life. Loss cannot be avoided. Things will be taken away. You will lose people. People will go away. And grief and preparing for grief isn't to avoid loss. It's to process loss when it does and will happen to you. It will happen to you. So there are different types of losses. We have loss by death. So someone has died. Loss by divorce. Okay, your parents get divorced or other family members get divorced. Loss of your health. Loss of your romantic relationships or your friendships. Loss of autonomy, so that would be your independence, and loss by moving away. Can you think of any other kinds of loss that you may have experienced and you didn't recognize as a loss at the time, or that you've seen other people go through where they've been in a grieving state, but what was the loss that they were grieving? You can lose your identity. You can lose a goal or a dream. You're working towards something and then it's taken away from you. You're training to become a hockey player and then you break your knee. and then you're told you'll never be a professional hockey player. It's over. That's a loss of a dream. That's maybe even a loss of an identity. Okay. Loss of pets. We don't always acknowledge how important a pet is in a family, and how that pet is a family member. There's so many loss of a belief, loss of some values. Let's look at the COVID situation. Loss of our lifestyle, loss of our interactions with people we care about, loss of our routine. And these are big deals. Every loss is legitimate. If your reaction is grief, then that was something that really mattered to you. And so you need to take it seriously that now this thing is not in your life anymore. So when we experience a loss, it is very natural, it is very normal to then get into the process of grieving. And the sooner you embrace the grieving process, the better it will be for you, because then you are now finally processing the loss instead of trying to ignore it and move on too quickly. So there's grief versus mourning. Okay, so there's two different words there. So what is the difference? So grief, like I said, is a normal and healthy response to a loss. It is the internal thoughts and feelings that we associate with the loss. So what you start thinking about and feeling. Okay, I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel alone. Okay, what am I going to do now? All those things. And ask yourself the question if you think grieving is acceptable in our society. I think it depends on the loss. I think we have certain losses that our society deems acceptable to grieve, and then there's other losses that we don't see as important. But like I said before, it's not up to other people to tell you if your loss was important or not, because if it was important to you, it's important. That's it. And so we have to, kind of push ourselves and give ourselves the permission that maybe we're looking for from the rest of our society is not going to give it to us. We have to give ourselves the permission to grieve. Now, in terms of mourning is about action. So mourning is taking what we are feeling inside and then expressing it. So going to a funeral is mourning. Writing a poem and then reading it at the gravesite is mourning. Doing anything that's a ritual or a tradition, okay, after a loss is mourning. And again, do you think mourning is acceptable in our society? I think it depends on the loss. So you're going to have to give yourself permission to express openly your pain and your grief about this loss, regardless of what other people have to say about it. Should people grieve the same way? They cannot. Grief is individual. There's a process to grieving. It's like a journey. You're on a journey, okay? And people will go about grief the best way that's for them. And we can never tell somebody, you're supposed to grieve this way. This is what you're supposed to do. Mm-mm. You should be doing, these actions, or you should stay home, or you should go to work, or you should, change your style, or you should move to this thing, or you should do the. We can never tell somebody where they are on their journey of grief, and we can never force it and make it move faster or make it go slower. It's really up to that individual person. Because based on your personality, your life experience, your history, the intensity of the loss, the kind of loss it is for you, your grief is going to be different from somebody else who has the same kind of loss. So you have to really keep that in mind when you're around people who are grieving, that you can't tell them how to grieve, and you can't judge people for not grieving in the way that you think is appropriate. Dr. Kubler-Ross was a psychologist who worked in the 80s and 90s, and she worked at the palliative care unit of hospitals. And the palliative care is when a person knows that their life is ending. They have a disease that is incurable. They are dying, And so they are placed in a special wing of the hospital in order to be made comfortable as they prepare for death. And so Dr. Kubler-Ross, as a psychologist, observed patients in palliative care and their family members. And she came up with what were called the 5 stages of grief. Since Dr. Kubler-Ross, there have now been 7 stages of grief that have been put together as the research continues. And so I'm going to go through the 7 stages of grief to help you understand what the process is. So the 7 stages of grief is the process of grieving. I want to be clear, though, that not everybody goes through each stage. Not everybody goes through each stage in order. And it is very normal to bounce back and forth between stages and to maybe sit in one stage for a little bit of time and then move forward into another stage, but then return back to that stage again. Because again, grief is not linear. It's not, I show up at 9 a.m., I grieve, I go home at 5, grief is over. Grief is a journey. There's a change, a transformation that's happening inside of you. And so the 7 stages of grief is just really there to help you identify where you are on your journey. And just as a journey isn't a straight line, a journey is twisty and turny all around. The same thing is with grief. It's twisty and turny. And it's not really about the destination. It's really about the journey that you're going on. So I'm going to use the example of my parents getting divorced. I want you to try to also take these stages and apply them to your situation during COVID-19 and the pandemic and the quarantine, and see if you did feel any of these stages during that time. And it's quite possible that you did. I think a lot of people did. So my parents are getting divorced. Major life disruption. So stage 1 of grief would be shock and denial. So a shock feeling is almost like there's a numbness. It's almost like you don't feel anything at all. And the denial is that you think it's not true and it's not actually going to happen. So your parents tell you they're getting divorced and you respond with, okay, sure. It's not true. You're not actually getting divorced. I'm going to go and do my math homework now. Okay, like you don't believe it. The second stage of grief is guilt. So you start to think, did I cause this? Am I the reason that they're getting divorced? Am I the reason that this is happening to me? Did I do something wrong to cause this? Moving on to stage 3 is anger. And anger, remember, is all about feeling a loss of control. Anger is usually an emotion that covers up another emotion, another set of emotions underneath that are more painful. And usually in order to avoid that pain, we get angry because we're trying to regain control of the situation. So anger. Why are they doing this to me? This is not fair. I can't believe my parents are getting divorced and ruining my life. Why are they doing this? After that, we get into bargaining. So we think that we can change what's happening. Maybe if I'm really good, I do all my homework, I don't get in trouble at school, I help with my brother and sister, I clean the house, I make sure my parents aren't stressed out, maybe then they won't get divorced and my life will be fine. But really, it's not up to you when your parents get divorced. I mean, when it comes to divorce specifically, it's really a breakup and it's between your parents romantically. And that's really what a divorce is. So just as if your friends broke up with each other, you can't do anything about that. It's the same thing like your parents. If they break up, you can't do anything about that. And it doesn't even have anything to do with you most of the time. It's really their romantic relationship has fallen apart. And they would rather not be romantically involved anymore. That's really what divorce is. Plus a whole bunch of other things. And you can't change it. So bargaining is not going to change anything. Again, think about COVID. Think about the kind of bargaining that we went through with COVID. Well, maybe it's only going to last like 2 weeks. Okay, well, I'll stay home. It'll be fine. And it'll only last 2 weeks. Okay, well, if I just wear my mask all the time, I won't get sick. Okay, if I do this, we're trying to control. There's a degree of control of that we're trying to do on a disease that not everybody can control. That even if you have a low risk, there's still a risk. It's not a zero risk. It's still a risk. and that our lives are not going to go back to the way they were before. Okay, if we do what the government says and we follow their precautions, everything will be fine. We're going to go back to the way life was in 2019. Everything will be fine. Life's not going to go back to 2019. Life has changed. The world has changed. So it's like, think about those things. When you think about bargaining, sometimes it's hard to understand, like, okay, but what does bargaining actually look like? There's a lot of bargaining that can happen in lots of situations. Even when someone dies, when someone is sick, there's bargaining with God. Please, please, please bring them back. Bargaining with the person who has died. Please wake up. Please wake up. Okay, that's bargaining. Okay, depression. That comes after all of that. So depression. Depression is immense sadness and loss of joy and appetite for anything. So not just eating food, but appetite for doing anything that you enjoyed before. You have no appetite for socializing. You have no appetite for going out. You have no appetite for getting dressed up and, putting on your best self. You have no appetite for going to work or school. You have zero appetite. You don't feel like doing anything because you feel so tired, and you feel like everything is a struggle. Everything is just too hard. It's just too hard to have to take care of. And you just want to be left alone. So that's depression. Okay, and depression is very normal to feel during a period of grief after a loss. Is depression, long-term? It could be long-term. Is it usually short-term? Again, depends on the person. What is short-term? Depression could be 3 months. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. It could be a few years. Depends on the person. And I would caution that if depression has been going on for a really long time and it's really disrupting your entire life, then there needs to be some intervention there, either with a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or your family doctor. So depression. I don't feel like doing anything right now. I want to be left alone. I'm going to go stay in my room. I don't care. If my friends come by, I don't want to see them. I don't want to go to soccer practice. I don't want to play video games. I don't want to do anything. Okay. Then there's stage 6. So you're in this depression, and then you start to come out of it a little bit. It's slow. It's not like a light switch doesn't just turn on. It's slow. So you start to work through it. You start to work through the grief. I feel a little less sad today. Maybe I can go out. Maybe I'll go, shopping for an hour. Maybe I'll go meet my friends for a bit. I'll do something that's light, that's still within my control. I'm not going to go from 0 to 100, but I'm going to start trying to do things because I'm starting to feel more like I want to do things. And then stage 7 is acceptance and hope. And not everybody gets to stage 7. And it's normal, again, to be at stage 7 and then to go back again. Because, again, it's a journey. It's not a do this. It's not a treatment. It's not like, this is what you're feeling. We give you this pill, and now you don't feel that way anymore. That's not what grief is. Grief is a journey. So acceptance and hope in the case of someone getting divorced would be, I don't like that my parents are getting divorced. I would rather they did not get divorced. It is a disruption to my life. It makes me sad and angry, and I really don't like it. But I know that we're still a family. I still have my parents, and I know that my parents still love me, and that they'll always be there for me, and that they're still going to take care of me even after they get divorced. Okay, so that kind of a level of acceptance. You can also think to yourself, I'm not my parents. My parents got divorced and broke up this family, but that doesn't mean that every relationship that I have will also end in that kind of breakup. So that's where the hope part is, right? I can have a relationship where I don't get divorced. It is possible for me. Not for sure, not guaranteed, but it is possible for me. Okay, so that's like that little hope section there. Okay, so to go through the stages again, we have shock, denial, guilt, anger, bargaining, depression, working through it, and then acceptance. So you need to give yourself permission to grieve. If you don't allow yourself to grieve properly, it could lead to many negative outcomes, like feeling isolated, feeling like nobody's there for you, You're all alone in this process. Feeling alone, feeling cut off, feeling like you don't belong anywhere, nobody's understanding you. You might start lashing out, you might start being violent or aggressive. You might break things, you might vandalize things, you might skip things, and anxiety. Okay, so anxiety is like an immense fear of the future, like immense fear that's crippling, and it prevents you from doing anything that you enjoy. So we need to give ourselves permission to grieve. You have to. And I know as a teenager, it's hard for you to stand up for yourself and say, this is what I need. This is important to me. And I'm sorry that none of you agree with me, but this is what I need. It's really hard to stand up and say that to others, to your family and your friends. But it's something that you have to start practicing and doing, because when you're an adult, it is what you do. You do stand up for yourself, and you do make all the decisions for you. So this is a good time to practice. Here are some do's and don'ts when you are around someone who is grieving. Let's start with the don'ts. Don't call people who are grieving and or mourning as weak. It really shuts down that conversation, and they're not going to confide in you anymore. Don't make their grief about you. Oh, your grandmother is in the hospital? She has cancer? Oh my God. My mom had cancer like 5 years ago, and she was in the hospital. It was awful for me. Okay, it was awful for you, but it's not your turn to talk about it. Okay, you have to take turns. If someone comes to you and says, this is what's going on in my life, listen, and then wait to share your story. Don't assume you know what other people are feeling or how intensely they are feeling it. Okay, always ask questions. Don't judge. And don't avoid your grieving friend or family, because they really need you. And we live in a community, and a community is about giving and receiving. We give support on some days, because on other days, we're going to receive support. And there's this equitable exchange of support that happens amongst community members, and you have to participate in that. So if you want support, you also have to give it. And it's uncomfortable, but we do it. Don't say things like, you'll get over it, as in you're trying to move it along, you know. I know exactly how you feel, because you do not. You are not their mind, you are not their brain, you are not their life experience or their history or their family or anything. You are just somebody else in their life. And if you want to really be there for them, you have to understand them, not assume anything. Don't say things like, it could have been worse. Well, yeah, it also could have been better. It doesn't matter if it could have been worse. It is what it is. And this is where they're at. And we accept it. Don't say things like be strong. I know it has good intentions, but saying be strong is basically telling someone don't be weak. So try to avoid that language, even though I'm sure your intentions are good. What can you do when someone is grieving? So do express concern. I can sense that you're feeling something really intense right now. Do listen without any judgment and without trying to answer any of their problems. Do offer support. What can I do for you? How can I help? What do you need? Do a kind gesture with generosity, which means generosity is when you do something kind, but without expecting anything in return. That is true generosity. So you help somebody, you support somebody, but then you don't expect them to say thank you. You don't expect them to smile or be happy that they got something from you. You don't expect them to show any appreciation or to return the favor or to compensate you in some way or reward you for doing something kind. That is generosity. Okay, generosity is not expecting anything in return. And it is a wonderful thing to do for somebody who's grieving. It really makes them feel loved and supported. So if you can, while respecting personal boundaries, of course, do a kind gesture with generosity. Be there for them. We live in a community. We give and we receive. We give support and we receive support. And that's good. That's how human beings thrive, by living in groups and supporting each other. An example of some sort of generosity is, I'm bringing you cookies. Like you text your friend, hey, I made cookies. I'm bringing you cookies to your house. And I'll be there. I'm going to ring your doorbell. But if you don't feel like talking about it, whatever it is that you're grieving, I'm just going to leave the cookies at the front door and help yourself. And then do your thing and leave. And don't expect them to say, oh, sure, yes, please come over. Okay, let me set everything up so that you can be here and I can entertain you. No. You just give them the option, and they take it or they leave it, and you do it anyway because you want to, because you're being generous. This all means that you have to be a little bit vulnerable, but that's okay, because being vulnerable is good. It means you're a human. So here's a wonderful little cartoon that I love. So being there for somebody is sometimes just as easy as this. Hey, you okay? Not really. You want to talk about it? Not really. Okay. And then you just sit with them. And you don't say anything, but you're just there. It's like you're just showing them how much you care. They don't owe you anything. They don't owe you an explanation. You're just there for them. Say things like, I'm here when you need me, or I'm thinking about you right now, or I see you're feeling something intense. Do you feel like talking about it? It's okay to cry. We have a lot of shame in our society when people cry. Crying is healthy. It is normal. It is part of your body's release of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, that it releases that way. We always feel better after we cry. Be around people who support you crying. Tell me more about what you're going through. I can't imagine how awful this is for you, but I would like you to try to tell me. I'm here to listen. One exercise we can do in preparation for grief and loss as a communication tool is to write down all the ways that we want to be comforted. And it could be anything. It could be, don't talk to me for an hour. I need to sit alone for a bit. Or I really love chocolate chip cookies. Or when I play basketball, it always lifts my mood. So offer to play basketball with me. Or I need to talk to my best friend. My best friend has to be part of this. Or my favorite comfort food is mac and cheese. Please make that for me. So write down all the ways that you want other people in your life to comfort you during your times of distress and sadness. Keep it somewhere. And then when something happens, pull it out and just show it to the people in your life and say, this is what I need. It's really hard to find the words, when we're going through a tough time to say what we need. So it's great to write it down in advance and just bring it out and be like, this is what I need. So remember, express your feelings. Do not bury them and do not ignore them. They are there for a good reason. Let them exist. Let them pass through you. Lean into it and listen to them. Honor what has been lost. Have a funeral. Release a balloon into the air. Write a poem. Write a letter and then burn it. Create a keepsake box of memories and keepsake tokens and pictures. Make a picture album. Have a place in your house that is dedicated to that person or that thing or that animal that is lost. Like, do something. Honor the person or thing that you've lost. And when we honor it, it makes it feel more real. Another way to make it feel more real is to verbalize the loss. Don't use language that kind of is vague. Be very specific. We are broken up and we're not together anymore. My best friend and I are no longer friends. My grandmother died. I am moving away to a different city and I won't see you ever again. Like, really say what the reality is. Don't try to be vague, because when you're vague, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're not letting yourself grieve. And you're preventing yourself from trying to get to that stage of acceptance. Verbalize. And also look at loss as a change, not as an end to something. Okay? Because there was a before the loss happened. There's an after the loss, and things have changed. Your life has changed. You have changed, and that's it. There is change. Change is always happening. Change is normal, and change is healthy. And to all my students out there, please come and talk to us. Your school is a wonderful place, has so many people in it and so many resources that we want to share with you. We have so much knowledge for tools on coping, and how to communicate better and how to express yourself better. So please, please, please come and talk to us at your schools. We are here for you. We want to listen to you. We want to hear what you're going through. We want to help you. And we know how to listen. Listening is a skill, and we know how to do it. We've been trained in it. So please come and talk to us. You are not alone. You are never alone. You are part of a human family that loves you and cares about you and wants to help you. So please reach out. Thank you for your time.